Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Teachers for You. I'm Tatiana.
And I'm Laura. We're so excited to kick off our January episode with you.
Oh, my goodness. Yes, we are.
So in our January episode, we're going to be looking at resetting for success after winter break.
Yes, January really feels like a fresh start. For our students and for us as teachers. We had our nice little break and during winter, during our vacation in December, and now it's time to go back and start all over.
That's right, winter break is over. Routines are a little bit rusty, and everyone is remembering how school works again. For example, like after the winter break, some of the things we're going to have to work on are routines fade. That energy, oh my gosh, the energy shift, like in your classroom, have you seen like the ability to focus is less, right?
Yeah. It is.
More daydreaming. I think we get the hangries, right, where we're hungry and get a little cranky, the kids do.
That
life
happens.
Is really, really unfair, right?
We all had that time to be able to do what we wanted for those few weeks off, and now it's coming back to reality, and it's like, I am so not ready for that.
Because it hits so hard, right? It's just like, and so, those expectations need a reset.
Yeah, definitely. It's a great time to start that. So today we're going to focus on strategies that actually work in January.
Oh, that's great. We're going to talk about reteaching classroom expectations and SMART goal setting.
And tracking goals through something like your subject matter, like math, and teaching students backward planning for projects. So today's topics like reteaching expectations, SMART goals, goal tracking for math, and backwards planning.
I love this. So let's start with a mindset shift. It's like, whoa.
Oh my goodness. Okay, here we go. Let's get ready. This is not the same classroom you left in December, and that's okay. Okay, so January, we're going to consider this kind of like a reset. We're going to start, not that anything is wrong, we're just going to reset. We got to start all over again. We got to just start getting back focused and into that mindset of learning again and being able to do what we need to do.
Agreed. Students come back excited. Some are excited. Some are tired. And sometimes they're forgetting the routines. Like, what is going on in here, right?
Yeah. Means that January is the perfect time to slow down and rebuild the foundations.
Yeah, that makes so much sense.
Yeah, so what we're going to talk about is reteaching classroom expectations and why reteaching matters. Okay, so one of the biggest mistakes we make is assuming that teachers remember expectations that we set in August. And a lot of times that's something that we just assume, and we know we can't do that because we know what happens when you assume.
That is true. And so, right, those students are not remembering their expectations. And so, also for us teachers, keeping in mind that reteaching isn't a punishment, and we really should communicate that to our students so that they understand it's a support. Reteaching is supportive, so it's not really a setback. This is something normal that happens in all classrooms, and so it's just support. It's January support.
Fantastic.
So let's start with how, like, those routines, maybe an entry routine, morning routines, starting with how students enter a classroom.
Okay, so yeah, this sets the tone for the whole day, and your entry routine, maybe it's something you need to revisit. Maybe it's something that worked for you in August. Maybe it's something that you want to adjust and want to make sure it fits right with the kids nowadays. So you kind of sit there and talk to them and refresh and remind and say, okay, what do? We walk in quietly. We get your backpacks and stuff. You put them away. Then you go to your table and you start your beginning your bell work, your morning routine, whatever the work is that the teacher assigns. And then you follow the directions. Like my students are used kids to, when they walk in, there's a slide on the board. And it kind of lays out what you need to be doing during that time when you walk in and what the day is going to kind of look like. And I'll be honest, since we came back from winter break, a lot of my kids just like, we're doing what?
Right.
I got to do what?
Right.
And I'm like, did you not look at the board?
Exactly.
We got to review that.
Exactly. And I love having those visual directions. It's just a way of making sure our classrooms are 100% inclusive, right?
Yeah. And, you know, like I just mentioned, those tend to be things that they tend to forget because they were just at home doing what they wanted, and now they got to come back to this more structured routine setting. And for some of them, it's hard.
And don't forget statements, right?
Yeah.
Or first then, like first do this, then do that, right? Or numbers or something. So they understand what that flow is supposed to look like. So those transitions now. Let's think about transitions.
Oh my goodness, yes.
I
drew a blank right there. I'm like, whoa, wait a sec, we're going from,
because
transitions.
it's January, right? That's what we expect in January.
We all kind of fall apart, not just the kids, sometimes teachers as well. So transition often fall apart after the break. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Exactly. So they just need practice, you know, and I actually love doing transitions because it really tells students without the teacher doing that walk, 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 you know, Charlie Brown's teacher. So when we think about that, just having it there, what do I need to do, avoids a lot of questions, especially if you have them on a smart board and you have them visually presented. It's one of the things I loved to do, and I used a template for that. But some of the transitions might be cleaning up. Like clean up quickly, what's the voice level going to be for the next activity, maybe your eyes are on the teacher, having those materials ready. And so those things would be important during transitions between activities or between content areas if you are an all-inclusive classroom where you teach all content areas throughout the day.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yes.
And then also you got to think about those participation norms. What does that look like, right? So what are those expectations? So participation expectations also need resetting.
Yeah, especially, you know, coming back, that respectful listening, because they might have been able to do whatever they wanted at home, or maybe they weren't able to be supervised and they missed that. And now we got to review back again what we expect when it comes to respectful listening, when it comes to when we're going to participate, how we're going to participate, or what are you going to do. So the expectation is, you know, you're not going to just blurt out everything. We got to review again. So what is it when you have something to say? You got to think about it, raise your hand, be respectful, listen to others, you know, and then stay on topic and try not to just blurt out things that are irrelevant to what you're learning about. Yes. We got to just assume that students have forgotten this. You know, granted 2 weeks is not a lot of time, but it's enough time to be forgetful about certain important parts in a classroom. Okay. So even when it comes to group work, we have quite a bit of group work that comes back into play when we come back from the winter break, just to make it a little bit more interesting for the kids. And so it's reviewing with them again, what are the expectations, how do we take turns, and how do you stay focused with your small group that you're assigned to, how do you share the materials, and how do you complete your role, you know, what is your part in that group, what do you need to do, and how are you going to support your group.
Exactly. And then the technology norms. I don't know about you, but that has always been a challenge in January. You know, kids go home, they've got their own devices, whether it be their phone, their tablets, iPads, whatever it may be, their own laptops. But they've been running the show. They've been using it when they want, how they want, and where they want. So really getting those expectations back into this is how we do it in the classroom. So it definitely needs a reset. So some things that you might have is when students aren't using the device, where is it? What's the norm for that? Is it that the face is down? I used to have it in the upper right hand corner of the desk, like all students had it in the upper right hand corner of the desk, and the flap or the cover was over on it. Some teachers might say under your chair, if you have like one of those chairs that have a basket. But where is the device when it's not in use? And then also thinking about staying on the assigned apps if you're using apps. or staying on the assigned page or website, making sure that students are where they are supposed to be, right?
This is also a great time to review the district norms for that, because some districts also offer programs for teachers to be able to monitor the students on their devices from the teacher device. And so when you're able to do that, then that goes again to reviewing the expectations of, well, how many tabs can you have open, where can you go, where can you not, or you can send messages to and from the kids. And it's kind of fun because then they all of a sudden get a screen that shows something that you sent to them.
So you have something that you use in your classroom to monitor.
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about that?
Well,
Sounds
it's
exciting.
a program that the district has given teachers access to, and it's a program that allows me to set how many tabs they can have open. And granted, these kids are all so tech savvy that sometimes you wonder whether they're able to get around this computer program. And occasionally you can see that some of the kids have tried, and they try, and some have succeeded and some don't. But when you're able to monitor them on your teacher device, it makes it a little easier to determine without you having to get up and walk around and whisper and, talk to somebody and they're in trouble. No, you can do it on the computer. I can monitor and I can choose a student that's in the wrong place, and I can hit a button that blanks their screen and they're not able to do anything, and it says heads up.
So they're like locked?
Yeah, they're locked and they can't do anything. And so then at that point I can approach them, or they can come to me and we can talk, or they'll know that I've seen what they were doing and they shouldn't be doing it. And so then they're able to, once I unlock that, they're able to go back and focus on what they need to focus on.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so that's a pretty cool thing. And a lot of districts have that. So that's something for you to review again with your students or with your colleagues and with the students, and what is expected and what you can or cannot do. Yeah. And so now let's talk about voice level. That's another thing that's usually gets forgotten after break. It's whatever your district has in place. We have different things in our district that talk about our different voice levels, and we have what we consider like voices 0 to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4. Everybody has a little different. And so we talk about what voice level should be in the hallway, what voice level should be in the classroom during transitions, and it's just reviewing. And I'm like, if I can hear you, that's not a voice level 0 or 1, because that would be a whisper. And if I can hear you, you're not whispering because I can hear you.
One of the teacher-friendly ways I used to handle it was maybe I heard somebody off topic and they were talking to their friend. So I may have turned around and said something like, "Oh, really? So this is what's happening?" And they could easily hear that I could hear their conversation. So it was very funny.
Oh, my goodness. Yes. Okay,
so also thinking about that independent work time, that is another time when kids can get really off task and go back into, it kind of aligns with that voice level, right? Now we start chatting, and it's not about our assignments, it's social chatting, and kind of reining that back in, especially with that independent work where they're feeling a little more freedom. Number one, clarifying what the students do before asking for help. So that's kind of important. For example, letting them know that the expectation is to try, at least make an attempt. If the teacher's provided some resources, there might be word banks, there might be other things to use, use those, because that's what they're for. And then asking after 3 to 5 minutes is one idea. And then one of the things I like to do is encourage PALS, which is peer-assisted learning strategies. Yeah. And one of them is ask 3 and then ask me. I should be the last person they ask when I am in a classroom.
Yes, that's a really good one, and that's one that I've used in my classroom too. But instead of ask 3 and then ask me, we call it ask 3 before me. Oh my goodness. And all of this, again, now let's talk about materials and how we clean up and what do we need to do. So my kids, I haven't really established this routine as well as I wished I would have. Other classrooms have done a better job, and other years have done a better job. But this year, I've been lacking in that. So I might have to be reviewing this quite a bit more in regards to how do we share the supplies, where are my things and my supplies that I let them borrow, and what do they need to do to them, and where do they need to put them when they're done.
Right.
You know, instead of finding 3 calculators in their desk, they should be putting it back in the desk, you know, in the drawer where the calculators belong.
Right.
So then we don't have to go looking for where did all of O'Donnell's calculators go to, you know. You know, and just talking about respecting what is, you know, theirs and what is somebody else's, learning how to respect property. Like, don't be drawing on your table. Don't be writing in the walls in the hallway. I had a student doing that, and I'm like, what are you doing? We don't write on the walls?
It's so true.
Oh, my goodness.
It is so true.
Oh, my goodness, yes.
So another thing, too, is just remember, with all of this difficulty in focus, routines, but also try not to teach everything all at once. I know we'd love
Super
to.
teachers, come on, we do. No.
Right? And we want to get it all done because we want to rush through this and get back to content learning, and we're ready. But really taking that time to know that just take your time and really get those routines down.
Excuse me. Absolutely. Yeah, picking one routine a day and practicing it well is what we want to do. The more practice, the easier it becomes, and the more they know what the expectation is and what they need to do, and then you don't have to constantly be reviewing it. They know exactly, and then it's just you doing the positive comments on, hey, great job on following through in our routines. Okay, so that's a great way to do that. Yes. So now let's talk about why goal setting works in January. We're going to talk about setting some goals. This is the perfect time of year. Half the school year is pretty much done, and now you got to focus on the second half. So let's start thinking about setting some goals and how we're going to achieve, how the students are going to be able to achieve what they need to achieve during that time. And that can be broken into different subject matter, different assignments, or just in general, just general ideas of what they should be working on or thinking about when it comes to setting goals.
Right. When I was in the classroom, one of the things I used to do is have an academic goal and a behavioral goal.
Yes. Those are wonderful. I remember you shared that with me, and I've used that plenty. I actually use that in my fall goal settings with my students. And we did that with parents as well. We talked about some goals for them for the fall and for the remainder of the year. And so now when we have our next set of conferences, we'll be able to review that and look at that. And I'm hoping to set some goals starting, because the new semester starts now. So we're going to start setting some goals for the remainder of the year.
Right. No, that makes so much sense.
And then one of the important goals is what we call the SMART goal.
Yes.
Why don't you explain that?
SMART goals, right? They give us structure. SMART goal gives structure, and it stands for, the S is that the goal must be specific. A general goal is impossible because you cannot measure it. Therefore, it won't be achievable to see, like, are you achieving the goal? M, measurable. A, is it achievable? Is it something I can do? Like, what I actually have. Let's say I have a student that's at a 4th grade reading level. I want to be at a 9th grade reading level. I'm sorry, that's not going to happen this year. I love that you are so enthused about this, but let's make it actually achievable and relevant. It doesn't have to do with what we're working on.
Yes.
Like, my goal is to get 4 goals in hockey. I'm sorry, we're working on reading goals, right? So at least having something that we're working on, and then making sure that it has it's time bound. So time is like how that is measured over time.
So are we thinking like a larger amount of time, or are we thinking something a little bit more that they can see, measurable, like, that amount of time? Is it easier to think about something like for 1 week versus 3 months?
Right, and so you could actually do it for 3 months, but having that check-in every week.
Okay, yeah.
You could do it like that, so you could do it for maybe the first half of the spring semester, right?
Yeah.
Where are we at? Do we need to reassess these goals? Or you could do it for a month. if you're doing a daily goal, right? So it's just on how often you're checking these goals. And that would have to be on what that expected outcome is. For example, reading. So, for example, instead of saying I want to be better at reading, right? You might come up with other things, such as I
want to read maybe 15 minutes a day.
Exactly. I want to read 15 minutes a day. And then I could do that and set the goal that I'm going to do it for how many days a week? Maybe 4.
Yeah, because maybe there's a big long practice night and you're not able to read that night. So now you divide it up in a different way so that you can make it attainable, achievable.
And then having that end goal or that end date. There's that time, being specific in the date. Or you might change it from I will read 15 minutes a day, which is an action plan. You might want to look at the outcome there and say, well, I'm going to improve my reading fluency from this current rate that I'm at to a new goal, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And that really ties into maybe a standard, right?
Okay.
Or a reading outcome. And then you would set that up as I'm going to read and record my reading, and then listen and reflect, right? Because this is about what the student is doing.
So sorry.
And maybe I'm doing it once a week for 1 month.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Especially with fluency, we want to get in there after having a good sample, and then get in there and try to adjust that right away for whatever we need to do. Like, we really need to get those measures going. And then that measurement can be done as a formative reading fluency assessment. It can be done as a cold read through a recording. I've done that with kids. They actually love listening to themselves doing that, and then they love recording it, and you can often tell if it's re-recorded because it will say recorded second, third time, or whatever. You're like, this is not a cold read, sorry honey. Good try. But then the teacher gets to see that one, or they could do it right in front of the teacher. That's a little more time consuming. For me, I always found that a little more inconvenient when I've got 30 kids in a classroom that I am trying to listen to each one read separately. And then giving feedback from the teacher. I think that's really important on that goal. And then remembering that reading fluency is not just speed reading. Right?
Yeah.
And something like that. It's not speed reading. Kids, I know when I taught 5th grade a few years ago, not the last 5th grade group, but in a different district, a lot of the kids were thinking that if I just read faster and faster and faster, that is fluent. And I thought, oh my dear honey, And I used to actually tell them, if it feels like you're telling me a story, like if you're telling me like a bedtime story, which would mean that you've got, it sounds natural, it's got prosody, intonation, emotion, and then there's also accuracy. Yeah. Then that's fluent. That's a very fluent reader. And then reading fluency should also have a check on comprehension, and that can be done with a simple retell. Yeah. Tell me what it was about. You could do that in writing, or you could just have them tell you about it orally. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Well, so other ways we can do is we can talk about now is some smart goal paper trackers. So this is turning the goal into an action. So having a paper that is tangible for the kids so that they can write on and they can see it and they can adjust it and they can watch how it's progressing. Those are always something that are very helpful for students. And I think that in the past you've had some like that on their desks. And I'm so sorry, I'm still fighting with a cold. No, it's okay. So they can have something that, like you mentioned, they can put it on their desks and you can laminate it, and then it could be used with a whiteboard marker so they can check off what they're doing and how they're doing and how they're feeling with it. You can create
paper trackers for reading when they're doing their reading at home, so they can gauge, well, tonight I read 15 minutes, tomorrow, and the next day I read 25 minutes, and then I read 10 minutes, and you can actually create that and show it on paper, and it's a visual that helps them see how they're doing as well.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And we know that kind of reflection strengthens their ownership in their work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because then they start setting the redirection.
Yeah. They can talk about what went well.
Yeah.
And they can talk about what was hard,
mm-hmm.
and what they can change.
Exactly.
If they need to change anything.
Exactly.
Maybe they don't. Maybe they do. Maybe they have to increase their goal because they've already achieved it in a shorter amount of time than they expected.
You're like, woo, celebrate.
Yeah. There's also ways to do it digitally. I mean, sometimes it's easier to have it on the desk because the kids are able to see it right then and there, and it's instantaneous.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes you can have it done on the computer.
Right.
You can do a Google Doc, you could do a weekly form, you could do a side checklist, you can create all that.
Right. Oh, that's so true. That's so true. And those visuals help build that motivation. They get to see however they're doing it, whether, it's climbing the thermometer, right?
Yeah.
Filling in the thermometer, like you're getting hotter.
Yeah.
Or maybe there's a sticker chart and it's going up. Maybe even marble jars, or like I was thinking, I know that every little student with their own marble jar would be really hard, but I think every student with a marble coloring sheet, like you get to color in the marbles, color in this many marbles, and
they like that. They like to be involved, and they like color. They like coloring. A majority of the kids, not all.
True.
What about like something like we could do some goal tracking in math and use it, and not, I mean, the goal tracking that we do, we can relate it to math. So we can talk about how much of the graph is colored in, or how much of a pie chart is colored in. You can relate it to fractions. You can talk about fractions and how this whole, or you could, if you're talking about coloring a column, and if this whole column represents 100 and you only get to part of it, what percent or what fraction, how many parts can you divide it into that are equal? So like you talk about 3/4 is the same as 75%, or what is the decimal of 75%? And you could throw this in and wrap it into math really easily.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That makes so much sense. So, and then, looking at, how would you do that as far as like those graphings, like you could have with your graphing, like weeks 1 to 3, and that would be on the bottom, right? And then you have on the y-axis, right?
Yes, we're talking like a bar graph.
Yeah, it's a bar graph, and then you could turn around and have like how many, or you could do that by color. You could do a pie chart, I suppose, on it. Just different portions of the chart could be filled in for percentages. I'm not sure.
You could relate it to kids and how much and how hungry they are. Let's do a pie chart. How much I want to eat.
Eat the pie.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, like we just mentioned, if you're talking about like 3 out of the 4 days you did that instead of 3 parts of the line plot or the bar graph, you can talk about 3 out of 4 days and relate that to fractions and then to decimals and percents, which is wow. Then you could throw in median, mode, range. Oh my God, that's all part of standards. You could talk about that. What is the average? In 3 weeks, what's your average? How much you read every day? In 3 weeks, how average it out. You add them all up and divide by how many days.
Yeah.
You get that average. Yeah.
That would be really good. Or even if you were doing a fluency check, you could have your average over these.
Yeah.
What was the average in this time span?
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's kind of cool.
So now let's talk a little bit about backward planning. Start with the end goal. I know you do. You like this. This is going to be your bread and butter right here because you're so good at explaining this. So like, let's say we're talking about writing, what would be the steps that you would encourage and teach the kids to do in regards to backward planning? Why don't you fill us in?
Yeah, so you're going to start with that end goal, and then you're going to look at those steps and make sure you have it in a timeline, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe if you're doing a 5-paragraph essay, you might have your due date that it's due on February 5th.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or 10th. That's coming up.
Yeah.
Right?
Right around the corner.
You might mark that, also have the kids mark the due date in their planners, on a calendar, on a timeline template, whatever you provide, but they should also be preparing a visual for that, right?
Yeah. So we could do like, we could break it down even further, not just when the due date is. You can talk a little bit more, breaking it down for each kid and learning, having them learn how to take a big project and make it into smaller chunks so that they can make it more manageable. Like you could say, what is the first thing we need to do? Choose a topic. Then what's the next thing we need to do is do the research once you've chosen the topic. And then create an outline on how you're going to write this. And then do your first draft. And then work on a revise of the first draft, and then maybe make the final. So if those are your 5 steps, let's say, what can we do? How can we work with that? Why don't you explain a little bit on that?
So you might be looking at that, but part of that too is you would have your certain dates.
Okay.
You'd have certain dates where this is where it gets a little mucky, and teachers have to really kind of look at that and give a little leeway as far as those students who are quicker. So you might set some due dates too for each piece, right? Mm-hmm. And walk kids through, like, this is the teacher-led backwards design, right? And so, on the 8th, so if my final is due on the 10th, then on the 8th, I have to do my editing, and my drafts have to do on the 6th. My outline would need to be done on let's say the 3rd. And then all this time in between, right? There is workshop time. Yeah. I have to have my research completed by the 11th, or doing it on the 11th. I have to have my topic. We're going to start the topic on the 28th. But those, I would say, those are like the teacher-led, but you also let kids look at that. You might have a student that says, you know what, I'm going to pick up my topic and start my research on the 28th. And have it finished up by the 31st, right? Mm-hmm. But letting them know, like, yeah, I'm going to have all of these. I'm going to meet it, or maybe there's a student that says, yeah, I'm actually going to do a topic, start the research, and I'm probably going to have my outline and draft done on February 3rd. Wow, yeah. Right? Because you have kids that are going to be like that. Mm-hmm. But again, the teacher-led model has those due dates for each part. But then also allowing kids to look at that, especially those advanced kids, right? Mm-hmm. That are way up there. They might turn around and say, well, it doesn't take me that long, but I need a little more time for my editing, right? Yeah. So there's that wiggle room in there for them. Their dates might look a little bit different, right? Yeah. And then showing students how to fill out their timeline template on a calendar, again, or whatever else they're using. Right? Yeah. I think it's a good idea to make sure that you as a teacher are there to support them and get to what they need to the spot on that timeline that they need. Right. Each one specifically. Okay, so in regards to that, then, I mean, if you're having these kids work with a timeline and creating what they think, then how do we just kind of check it off, or what's in progress? So that's something that if you help the students create, then you as a teacher can walk around and see, or have meetings with each of the kids or a group of kids at a time and talk about, well, where are you? What do we need help with? How can I support you? Right? And that instruction, too, doesn't necessarily have to take place in the content area time. That could be some of those morning meeting check-ins. It could be some of the bell ringer or seat work in the morning. Make sure you get your tracking done, get those done, so that the content area time is being really used for so they can use that time for their production. Also remember that we want to make sure that we're telling them what those expectations are for each thing, right? That little mini rubric. Right?
Reviewing those expectations again.
And that rubric that says, this is what I'm going to look for. These are my look fors. Is so that they don't say, well, I got it done, but we didn't give them the look for is what I'm going to grade it on each part.
And it's interesting because sometimes when you give those kids those rubrics, they assume that they're grading themselves on those rubrics.
Right.
I've had that, and I'm like, no, honey, this is so you know what I'm looking for.
Right.
So this is, I'm going to look for capitalization and punctuation, etc. And so it's making sure that they're aware of that as well.
Yeah, no, that makes so much sense. Yeah.
Okay, so January isn't just about rushing content.
No, it's about rebuilding the routines and skills that actually last all year or the rest of the year and possibly beyond.
Yes, those are things that we need to make sure that they're aware of because they could take that into the next grade level they go to or into the next school. So reset the expectation, teach goal setting, track the progress, build independence. It's all about having them become better students and more focused on themselves and how to help themselves so they're never stuck.
Right.
Wow, that's a lot of information, a lot of interesting and good things to talk about and some good ideas, you know, and we're hoping that this is something that has been helpful to you. And then we want to thank you for joining us on Teacher to Teacher for You.
And if this episode helped you, share it with another teacher and give us a like and subscribe. So, but until then, we'll see you next time on Teachers to Teachers for You.